Okay, a little video here about reactivity. I just realised that I could talk about this for a long time, and it is really, in many ways, part of the fundamental issue for most people. When I realised I was researching something really quite a long time ago, that actually the prisons, the jails, are full of 80% of people, men and women, who've acted impulsively in reactivity. Violence, mostly in the heat of the moment. This reactivity, the hot, bursting out, accounts for 80. I don't know the figure, I've forgotten, but it was up there. And for a lot of those people, and in many ways, in the cold light of day, upon reflection, that reactivity was regrettable in many ways. But the unconscious state, the conditioned state, the suppressed state, the pent-up state, the one that we talk about all the time in the spiritual world in many ways, certainly in the conversations that I have with people, that which is pushed down, that which is buried, that which is neglected, hidden, the shadow we call it, etc., etc., is always almost looking for a way out, not consciously, unconsciously. And all that needs to happen is a set of circumstances, out of the normal pattern of our life, if you like, or even not out of the normal pattern of our life, just provoked by a thought, a sensation, an event, an experience, a word, a relationship, a conversation, an altercation. And it can be anywhere, right? It could be in the family, it could be in the home, could be, out on the road. It could be out on the road, it could be in the store, it could be anywhere, and then, anything that seems to activate this, what Eckhart Tolle might call the pain body, and this reactive body, the mild version or a very, very serious, heavy version, the reactive body, that the self, unexamined, carries around, is there, dormant in a way, all the time. This is an issue. This is a problem. And it needs to be talked about and brought to the surface and dissolved. So in many ways, in trying to keep this conversation, this video relatively short, the first thing to do, in a way, is to admit that there is reactivity, right? And then to see where it is, to look at the patterns of one's recent life, if you like, or past life. It doesn't, not past life in, different life, just in this past. And to see where reactivity might emerge, or to look, directly at, see, in the last 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, 1 day, where has this reactivity emerged? What what is this reactivity that we carry? What is it that happens in the reactive moments? What's being challenged in the reactive moments to actually start to, and we can only, in many ways, at the beginning at least of this kind of inquiry, this ongoing unpacking of reactivity. We can only look at it in many ways in retrospect because it's too hot, it's too dense, it's too real, it's too fast, it's too active to actually be able to get to it at the time. So we only really have retrospect. But when we do have retrospect, we get to, let's get real honest here. What did we think was going to happen? What was deeply embedded in us? What are those primal thoughts? What are the beliefs? What are the sensations that happen in reactivity? Is it fight or flight? Are we engaged in fear? Yeah, are we fighting for our survival? Is it like, if I don't, the reactivity kind of happens, and within that reactivity we might see that we were, a little child fighting for its life. I have to fight. I've got to fight here, or I've got to, defend myself in some kind of way, because there's a sense that I'll die if I don't get reactive. Because even though it feels hardwired into us, this reactivity, I would posit that it's conditioned into us. And conditioned is not hardwired. It's a level above hardwired. Feels hardwired, but it's actually soft-wired. It's entirely dependent in many ways on the conditioning that we have had, the experience that we've had when we've been growing up with parents, with brothers, sisters, siblings, aunts, uncles, religious teachers, religious leaders, whatever, teachers, and the whole culture of the family that we've absorbed, as well as our own tendency, our own physical kind of architecture, if you like, of what maybe, what star sign we are, what tendency we have, what Ayurvedic sort of dosha we lean towards. Are we more hot, like in Pitta? Yeah, are we more Pitta based? Or are we more Vata based? Yeah, with Pitta, you're going to veer more towards the hot, towards the irritated, towards the anger. Whereas with the Vata, there's going to be more of a tendency towards the fearful, towards the anxious, towards the frightened, towards the kind of very the nervous system based. And and all of those components make up, in a way, they lay the foundations for what we carry into the future. Yeah, for what we carry, they build up our personality. We carry that personality around, and it's from that personality which has been built into us in many ways, soft-wired, as well as a little bit of hardwiring maybe, into us. And then we proceed to act in the world from that place. And that could be a very flawed place, and it could be a very wounded place, or it could be a very frustrated place, it could be a place of suppressed anger, or there's always some suppressed emotion happening there. And so all it takes then really is a set of circumstances to actually activate that reactive body. And then it's almost as though we're playing out, a character. I've seen all sorts of things. I've felt all sorts of things when when before I resolved the reactive body. I'd be reactive. And it was very destructive ultimately. Very destructive to me, very destructive to, because it usually would come up, for me anyway, in relationship, in intimate relationship. It could come up, in external altercations, but I would tend to kind of withdraw or hold myself back from those. But in intimate relationship, I could be really quite reactive. So. And everybody has their own way with it. Everybody has their own kind of reactive body level of how it's gonna manifest. But that's why the invitation here is to get under the hood with it, to actually dig into it, to actually, let's face it, meet it consciously. Yeah, say, if it's true for you, it's I do react. I do react in certain situations where I feel either threatened or misunderstood or judged or vulnerable, attacked. In any of these ways, it can come up. And once the reactive body is activated, it does have its own life. It really does have its own life, right? And what I've found, to get personal over the years, is that from being in a way, pretty reactive, potentially quite volatile person, as I said in a different video, sort of quite intolerant, really, in a way. And as I've sort of over the years, with the deepening of the spiritual transformational journey, the whole experience, the whole energetic experience has softened and calmed down and softened and calmed down. And still there would be something, that might activate the reactive body. But by and by, over time, it's kind of gone, it's quietened down and quietened down and quietened down. So there's not much, ever really much movement from this natural kind of presence, I guess I would call it, sort of natural way of being that is, can respond very, very powerfully or strongly. Yeah, it's not the opposite of reactive in this instance. It's not just some, wet passivity where, whatever, I don't care what kind of happens because I'm not reactive anymore. This is just not true. This is not the way it is, and that's not what's being talked of here. The opposite, in a way, if there is one, of reactivity is presence. And then from presence, which is a sort of deeper ocean of being, it's a deeper way of being. Yeah, it's to be rooted in presence all the time, all the time. And then if there is a movement away, it's like quickly there's a return to the equanimity of this presence, and from this presence, there's a more of an awareness, right? And from that awareness, a response might happen. A yes, no, I'll do this, or a sort of an authority. Coming from an authority. And reactivity is the loss of authority. Yeah, reactivity is in many ways, on the small level, on the big level, the gig is up. There's a certain out of controlness about reactivity. We're a passenger, in our own experience. That's why the prisons are full, or have that many, people who've acted in reactivity. They're a passenger in their own experience. The blinding light has happened, and they've acted, and it's been violent maybe, or impulsive, or toxic in some kind of way, and vroomp, and the next thing you know, you're in jail. And in many ways I've seen that, and I've seen that's actually a metaphor. It is a metaphor, because reactivity is a jail. It is a jail. It's a prison. It's a prison for self, and it's a prison for the world, because as soon as, one person, if two people start engaging in reactivity, because your reactivity activates somebody else's reactivity, either a partner or a lover or a wife, a husband, a child, a friend, a parent, or somebody else in a road incident or something like that, you've got two reactive people. This is really dangerous. This is really destructive. This can be a nightmare, really. So it's a difficult thing, because the reactivity is related, isn't it? As we're talking here, you can feel how reactivity is related to the past, if you like. It's related to our past wounding, our past denial, the past suppressed, anger, if you like, or fear, or life force itself is suppressed, and there it is trying to come out. So the beauty of the journey anyway, this spiritual journey, is to know that, is to say that, is to admit that. There's nothing wrong with admitting it. In fact, it's worse not to admit it, especially if it is in there. Is to admit it, and then to start to turn towards the factors inside, the patterns within, that are laying the ground for the reactivity. What are they? What have you been through in your life? Where did what happened when you were a child? What happened? I don't mean to indulge in these things, because it's, that what I talk about is not therapy. But it is human. It's human. I'm talking about the human values here. We much as we want to be maybe spiritual beings, we also have a human experience, and that human experience for many, many people was fraught with trouble, back when we were children. And where does that go? Where does that suppression, that trauma, that wounding, those grievances, where do they go? Because they don't just go nowhere. Nothing goes nowhere. It's one of the principles of intelligent life. It's like, if you push it down that side, it's going to come up that side. If you push it down that side, well, it's just going to stay down there. It's not. It's going to come up this side. So that's the principle that I've understood is the truth. If it's an energy that has been pushed down when we were young, that energy is lingering and is trying to get out, and it's trying to get out, and it will actually in a very intelligent way, if you really think about it, it will come out in a certain way in the reactive moments. Triggers, buddy. Now, I'm talking about triggers. It's taken me 17 minutes to even mention the word triggers. It'll come out in the triggers. You push it down when you're 4, 5, 6 years old. It's going to run around in your life. It's going to follow you around in your life. And then even when you're in your 30s, 40s, that was suppressed then, and you're 4, 5, 6 years old. Oh, there it is in the trigger when you're 40 years old, or 20, or whatever, 60 years old. You push it down when you're 4, it comes up when you're 40 or 50. That's the way the law works. That's the law. That's the law of natural intelligence, of how intelligent we are. That's phenomenal. And that means that it's incumbent upon us to find a way, to find some way to deal with that which was suppressed. You don't have to make a meal of it. You can do therapy. Anyway, I talk about all this all the time on my channel, of ways to do it. But this is just a video about bringing awareness to the reactive self, to the self that triggers, the self that gets triggered, and to make decisions, to shine the light, to bring the light to that, to bring the light to it. Because the more you bring the light to it, the more you're going to expose whatever it is that's lying underneath the triggers, underneath the reactivity, and that gives you awareness, and that gives you a kind of power to actually do it. Attend to it, to look at it, to bring it up to the surface. It's not the devil, it's not a terrible thing. It's just a fact of being brought up in a screwed up, messed up world with screwed up, messed up parents and screwed up Western values, and the whole pushing the shadow away, because we live in an unconscious world that's sort of just a fact of life, really. So we kind of get intelligent and say, okay, if that's the intelligence of life, you know, then let's deal with it. Let's start to have a look at it. Okay, so I hope that that speaks to you in some kind of way. There's a lot more about triggers and the reactive body to unpack, but I'm trying to keep this at the 20-minute mark. And so here we are. Bless you. Thank you for listening and watching.